Hey, music fans, there are some great concerts headed this way. Don't miss out on all these shows in Dallas. Deftones at Madison Square Garden, Eagles at the Sphere, and Foster the People at the Ryman Auditorium. Tickets are going fast, so don't wait. Head to LiveNation.com to get your tickets now. That's LiveNation.com.
You ever get that feeling like the concrete jungle's closing in? You crave wide open spaces, the chance to chase your own dinner, or just breathe clean air. Well, listen up. There's a whole world out there waiting, and finding your piece of it just got easier. Head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, you name it. Search by acreage, price, location. They've got it all. No matter what kind of wild dream you're chasing, land.com can help you find the ground to make it a reality. So quit dreaming. Head over to land.com, find your open space, and get out there.
Once again, television has given me a reason to live.
Good news, everybody. It's a special Talking Futurama interview. I am one of your hosts, Bob Mackey, wishing you a Merry Xmas. And who is here with me today, as always?
While hiding out from Santa Claus, it's Henry Gilbert greeting you.
And yes, we decided to drop a little holiday gift under your tree because way back in September, mid-September, I believe, we interviewed the supervising director of Futurama, Peter Avanzino. And of course, as Fry says, time makes fools of us all. And here we are 2 months later, finally putting it out there for you all to listen to, and we think you're really going to like it.
Yeah, we had an open Monday, so a perfect time to share with everybody, and you know, you got a holiday break, so a great time to listen to it. And Peter is such a great person to chat with, and he is such a giving man with his time and his history in animation that it was such a great time chatting with him.
Yes, we mentioned he is supervising director on Futurama to this day. He began that role with the Comedy Central era, but he has been with Futurama since day one. And of course, he worked on The Simpsons and other shows we like Ren and Stimpy and Duckman. So he's got a lot of great credits to his name and a lot of great stories to go along with those credits. So without further ado, here is our interview with the great Peter Avanzino. So, Pete, just to get started here, we want to know where you came from in terms of your path to the animation industry. How did you get started? What was the first thing you worked on? Where did it all begin for you?
I'll start with the teaser. The first thing I worked on was Simpsons. But you know, I came out of high school good at art and good at math, and counselor said, "How about architecture?" And I went, "Okay," because I didn't know. I was just kind of on autopilot going to college. I went there for a couple of years and loved learning design, and I had a comic strip in the paper, and I liked everything the first 2 years. And next year was, let's design some buildings, and I was like, yeah, I'm not that into this part. So I wound up eventually trying, computer science, some other things, and eventually going to Long Beach State for illustration. And I'm not a great illustrator. So I graduated from there, and I did take one animation elective, which was offered like once every third semester, where I did, learned the basics. And a friend and I really loved watching Looney Tunes and stuff. And he wound up transferring to Cal Arts. And he called me about a year after I graduated, and was not, I was doing some computer page layout stuff. I'm not the greatest artist illustrator, but he said, hey, he had transferred to Cal Arts and said, hey, there's flyers on the wall. The Simpsons are giving out storyboard tests. So I went, okay. And I went up there and got one, or maybe just gave me the number, and I called and took a test. And I did not get the job, but, I uncharacteristically in my lazy life called them back and said, hey, I turned my test in. I was wondering if there's any news. And this lady, Pam, said, yeah, we actually, I meant to call you. They wanted me to come in and talk about it. So they brought me in, and while I waited to talk to somebody, they gave me a script and a storyboard. And at that point is when I could look at what a storyboard was actually supposed to be, compare the script and go, oh my God. And then Steve Moore, who was one of their storyboard artists, and Rich Moore, who was a director, came out and basically, said there was something there, and they wanted me to try again. And so I took another test from Simpson and Delilah. Just it's a scene from a episode that hadn't been done yet, with Homer presenting his ideas to Mr. Burns at a meeting, and they hired me from that. And
Wow.
I was at the right place at the right time. Like I said, I'm not a great finished artist, but I can draw. I have ideas. I can draw them quickly. Storyboarding is quickly putting your ideas down. It's blocking the show. It's making things funny. And at the time, The Simpsons was new, and they wanted it to look like a sitcom. And not many people in the animation industry wanted to do that, as you can tell if you look at that first pilot that almost got the show canceled, which was the only professional director that they hired. The main guys like David and Wes had never run a TV show, so they wanted somebody who had worked in television. And those guys they hired had a lot of habits from Saturday morning and whatever else that they put into that show. And these guys did not want that. So I think they were looking for people like me who could draw and could learn what they were looking for. And it was it was great. And I immediately, my skill level amped up, 200% in the first week. And I just looked at what everybody else was doing, and it was great. And there were a lot of the other guys were from advertising, or my friend Ramey was from, he had been working in movies, but he drew a lot. So he came in, he had cinematic staging. It was a
That's
good mix of people.
Yeah, based on your first episode, it sounds like you must have gotten hired just as the show was exploding on television, just as it was the
It was like,
biggest deal.
oh, no, because it was on, first season was on a long time before I
Mm.
got hired on second season. And I had watched, my tapes of the show 100 times. That I watched the Tracy Ullman show. I loved that. First, the Christmas special was great. And I think it was several months before the show started after that. I just watched that tape. And then, first season, I watched, I loved that show. It was
yeah.
crazy. And at some point, I guess I never even thought like, oh yeah, I should go to try to apply to this. Till a friend said, hey, they're giving out storyboard tests. All right.
Wow. So Simpsons was your Cal Arts then. Like
Yeah.
that's where you learned animation. That's so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if there was some sort of secret credit or something you worked on before The Simpsons, but you just jumped right into The Simpsons and was on a roll from there.
I did as a storyboard artist. I mean, I'm by no means an animator. And even later when I was directing on shows that we did layout, and even now with storyboards, I expect everybody in that building to draw better than me. Everybody underneath me better draw better than me.
Well, yeah. So you storyboarded on so many classic episodes. Like we could just we're Simpsons podcasters first, and we could just ask all about those. But like, do you have any particular favorites that you worked on in those days?
I mean, Simpson and Delilah was the first thing. They hired me, and I think they used my test. And then the next one was Bart the Daredevil, which was incredible. And when I got hired, the producer said, "Well, a professional can do an act of a show in 2 weeks." And I go, "Okay, I'll just work hard until I can do that." And that's really hard to do. And I think they redrew almost all of it, because the notes that came in were good. I could learn from the notes. Like Sam Simon had great notes just about pacing. Like, this is ridiculous. Don't show this yet. Now is where you should show the gag. And my fondest memory of that is when Homer falls down into the cavern, into the gorge, and they pull him up and they put him in the ambulance. And as I remember it, the script said the ambulance hits a tree, and then I another board artist might have suggested this, but I'm the one who drew in, having the ambulance, the stretcher come back out of the ambulance and go over the edge again, and then just reuse the scene of the kids looking over the edge. And then
wow.
later in a clip show, Wes then animated Homer falling down the gorge in the stretcher. That was in a later episode. They put that in, but
Wow.
I love that one. Streetcar Named Marge. I had a lot of fun with staging the musical stuff, and
Oh yeah. I mean, staging a musical has to be so hard, right?
yeah, but it's fun. I pitched stuff to Rich. Rich Moore directed that. Most of the other stuff, like the Maggie and the daycare center and the Great Escape, I would show my boards, and he would just go, "Oh, that's great," and then redraw all of it. But
Yeah, you did send us some of your old materials, and I want to point out that you are the one who figured out how to cram a ton of Simpsons characters into a 4x3 space in Bart's Comet.
Yes, that was later. I think when I was freelancing, I would work the Simpsons storyboards were on legal size paper, and they had 4 panels on them. So each panel was like 2 inches by 3 inches, and you had to put Ned Flanders' bomb shelter with every character in Springfield into one of those panels. So eventually, I started drawing on layout paper and then Xeroxing stuff down.
Hmm.
And I put everybody I can think of in there. And then, of course, David Silverman, like, that's not enough people. So it's like a pile of heads if you look at it, with some bodies coming off the bottom. But that's fun.
So you started storyboarding in 1990, and currently you're supervising director of Futurama, and you were for the Comedy Central years as well. And I imagine you're
Mhm.
looking over a lot of storyboards. Can you give us some
Yeah.
insight as to how the storyboarding process has changed since the time you started?
It's changed a lot, because when I started, storyboarding was a specific step in the production. We would like I said, you could storyboard a show in, 2 people would take like a month to storyboard it, because you're just sketching each scene and each scene cut, and only enough acting poses to convey what the scene's about. So if Homer's watching television and he has a line, you might just do one drawing. The producers would look at the boards and approve it, that say, we want to see this here, we want to see that there. And then it would go to another step called layout, where like I said, a storyboard artist might do a whole third of a show, and a layout artist is going to get each week they're going to get assigned 12 scenes, maybe, or 12 to 20. I'm not sure. Quite a few, and they're going to do full size drawings of the scene. They're going to draw the whole scene with a background layout artist, put everything on model, put the BG on perspective, and act it out. They're going to list. When I storyboarded, I had the audio track, but now they have the audio track, and they're sitting there with a cassette tape. Back in the old days, now it's a computer. But just listening and putting in, again, as many acting poses as you need to convey that scene. And an action scene is worked out, running, football. They're playing football, they're playing hockey, whatever it is. So storyboarding back then was just kind of planning the overall act, and working out a little bit of, I did like, working out a little bit of where the camera's going, enough to make it clear, but they were not by any means, fully acted out. Now we're working now. Even Futurama does not have that layout step. Most shows do not have that layout step, except The Simpsons has a hybrid type thing. They might not use layout for close-ups and stuff anymore, but they do it for bigger scenes. But we don't. We go full storyboard, and I started doing that even on Duckman, which was just too cheap. I mean, not too cheap, but they did not have the budget. A layout department is, for each episode, it's 12 new other people who work on it for 2 to 3 months. And that's an enormous amount of money to spend. So when Futurama, when we did the movies, we still had layout. But when we went to Comedy Central, by that point, we had done other shows without layout. And we said, yeah, we can probably do without it. And we were still on paper at that time. So, but I'll just jump ahead to now. We storyboard on Cintiqs using Storyboard Pro, which everybody's still drawing by hand with a pen, a stylus on a Cintiq. But the storyboard program has the audio in it, and you can just hit play and you can really watch. It's the same as flipping your drawings. You can just see how everything's playing, how everything's working. You can really act out the acting and again, hit play, go, oh, I need another pose here. I need another pose there. So storyboarding now, people get, less done page-wise because they're doing so much more. They're really having to do layout. You're just sending your boards to Korea or wherever you have it animated. So everything's got to, the angles have to be right. The characters, you fall into a trap of making them really on model, which we do. If you're smart, some shows they send stuff really loose, which forces the animators over there to put them on model, which is smarter. Sometimes when we send stuff that's too tight, they might trace it, and I can usually tell who storyboarded something because the drawings tend to look more, they're on model, but they still have the picadillos of each different artist. So it's become a lot. It's easier to do, but now you're having to do a lot more.
In those early animatic days at Simpsons, were there any rough times where we've heard it from the writer side more on the commentaries of like, oh, we changed this thing and it was a big bunch of work, and the artist eventually told us, can you please stop doing that? Have you been on the other side of that? Any rough times with that on Simpsons?
Well, back when I was on Simpsons, I was just storyboard. So I didn't, once the show left my department and went into layout, I don't know that I ever met a writer or a producer. The directors did. And Gabor and Sherry. I know that the show just got so popular, and there's a common opinion among writers that, oh, it's animation, you can do anything. So when they start writing shows about monorails and shows where the whole town is chasing somebody with torches, it's the same small crew that did season 1, and there's not a lot more money for season 2 or 3, but they're writing a lot more stuff. And then if they want to so you do your animatic, like we would not do a storyboard animatic. They would just write notes on the board. They would make an animatic out of the layout drawings. They would put them on a light table, shooting through the layers of paper. So you have a limit on how many layers you can use, 6 to 8. And so it's a pencil animatic, and it's cut to the audio, but no sound effects or anything. And they would rewrite quite a bit, I think. They rewrite a lot now. Like rewrites have gotten really heavy. I've been on shows where they just change writing all the time, like sometimes while you're working on something, and that you can say, look, we can't get anything. Like after the animatic, I could spend the next 2 months plussing everything, which I've had shows like that where I can make it better, or I can redo all the new stuff that you've rewritten. And then, it's kind of, and then you're going to see it for the first time in color because you're not going to get a chance to even really see it. Insane in the Mainframe. I remember you guys commenting on the lighting and stuff. It was a fairly quiet, nice episode. And I had time to just, like, when Fry's in his cell, there's one color when he's in there with Eddie, and then the door opens and there's light on him. And then the box with Roberto covers the door, so it's a little dim. And then that opens up and he's flooded with red light. And you know, there's that. If you can have your animatic and then during your revisions, you know, if you have some rewrites and do them, but if that in that time you have some free time to plus everything, it's great. I think we got out of storyboarding. Sorry.
No. Well, okay. So also in those old Simpsons days, we've had on, you know, we talked with like David Silverman before too, and also Wes, and there's some fun stories about, you know, that it sounded like it was real. It could be a wild time at the Klasky Chupo building at times, and then when it turned over to Film Roman, like how would you compare the cultures at those two companies and the shifts from like 3 to 4?
Well, the Klasky was a lot of fun. I mean, they had bought like a building that had a travel agency in it, and then just started cramming people in there. So, you know, I'd be in a room like 10 by 15 with three of us. You know, they could just see how many desks they can squeeze in, and all the layout rooms were in various size offices. Um, I was in storyboard, so I would get laid off. We were laid off like, you know, Thanksgiving. And then, you know, the first couple seasons I'd have to call and go, hey, are we going to get picked up? You know, we'd get picked up like in April. So yay, I have a job. The year it went to Film Roman, you know, we knew it was picked up, but I called them a number of times. Like for all I knew, they were going to use their own people, you know. I called them. They said, "Oh, we can find something for you to do." And they walked me around. They were doing like Garfield and Happy Acres, but nothing ever came of that. And so at that time, Ren and Stimpy was out, and I wrote a script and drew a board and applied to there, and I got that job. And so I freelanced boards at Film Roman, but I never really worked there.
Okay.
That year that it moved was when I shifted over to Ren and Stimpy, and that was another unique place, closer
Oh
to
yeah,
Class Depot than to Film Roman.
we definitely want to get into that, Pete, because you directed one of my favorite episodes. It's the only one you directed. It is Stimpy's Fan Club. And
Uh,
according to the credits, you were an AD for the entire second season. That is an amazing season of television, but also it was interesting production-wise based on everything that's come to light and many interviews with people like Bob Camp and the crew.
yeah. I mean, like I said, I went on there like right at the start of season 2, and I wrote a sample, and they hired me, and I worked on Stimpy's First Fart mostly Stimpy's First Fart and Stimpy's Fan Club with John. You know, I'd get an outline, I'd story. You know, we did like what you see on Looney Tunes. We drew on a panel twice as big as the Simpsons panel that usually only had one or two characters in it, and pin them up on the boards. You know, and there was no audio yet, no script. And so I would do that, and then John would come in and go, yeah, no. You know, like if you look at when Stimpy tells Ren that he farted, and the amount of back and forth, like of Ren going like, "Let me get this straight. Something came out of you." You know, the amount of back is nothing I or anyone else would ever do. But John's like, "These are the beats I wanted it." You know, and you know, and just to be able to say I got to work on Stimpy's First Fart was great. And then I storyboarded Ren's Fan Club with him, and all that crazy stuff, you know, with the hands, and you know, I had to go watch. I had never heard of Night of the Hunter or any of that stuff. Went and watched it, and I think John, you know, he's like, "Have you ever like been awake at night just with the sweats from doing too much acid?" And I'm like, "No." And goes, "Well, how far are you willing to go for research?" It was not, but
No.
so I storyboarded that, and then when the show moved to games, and I went with it, they needed people to direct. I had never directed, so they let me direct that one, and it was great. You know, I had a really great time. But then after that, they needed me to just storyboard, and I was pretty unhappy about that, but I did it. And I don't know why I have an AD credit. I really don't. I think I was just a storyboard artist.
Okay, yeah. With Stimpy's Fan Club, you mentioned the psychotic Ren scene where he's fantasizing about killing Stimpy. I think that episode is notable for it feels like a 5-minute scene of Ren just reading and writing letters. And it's
Yeah.
incredible that you can sustain attention with just those simple actions. I love watching that scene just because of all the things that are done with just
Uh-huh.
a shot of Ren reading and writing.
Right. Yeah. Again, just his expressions, and that's John reading it too.
Hmm.
I mean, he was so I had his voice his audio was great, and I'm sure there was a lot of those storyboard poses in there, but then when to be able to take it through layout where we could have a drawing, just add more drawings for every little like and all the
Hmm.
writing and stuff. I animation's great. You go through your show, you get all right, it's done. Now I can go and just really that's like you said, I don't think it's 5, but it's 3 minutes of
Hmm.
somebody sitting there writing letters and it's just all in his face. So you just uh, add as many poses in there as you can. Sometimes you reuse some, but
Yeah, that's such a great like dark episode too. Just seeing, I mean, to see that Ren Stimpy got away with a lot of stuff, but to see Ren in bed considering
yes,
strangling Stimpy to death, like
yeah.
on a kid's show.
My the spec thing I wrote started at Stimpy's funeral, and everybody was there, and like Stimpy's 3 nephews were there, and so Ren goes home sad, and then Stimpy's ghost shows up and goes, "Hey, I'm here to protect you, Ren," and he protects him until he winds up killing him, getting him killed. Oh, it keeps causing Ren to have accidents, so Ren can't slap him because he's a ghost, and eventually he does get Ren killed, and he has this. There's a great Casper cartoon where he meets a skunk friend, and the skunk dies, and there's a scene of Casper just walking towards the camera holding this ghost. He was my only friend, and I wrote it was a big rip off of that. Ren gets buried, and then of course his ghost comes out, so now they're happy again because he can slap Stimpy. But yeah, John was like, "Nah, I don't think people want a cartoon where one of the characters is dead." Like, what are you talking about? I mean, they never did that one,
I
but
think they seem to die a lot over the course of the
Yeah.
series.
yeah, they go to hell. I mean,
Hmm.
Mhm.
but you can
But
end a cartoon with that. You can't start it with.
Yes.
one that had to be a big change too. You're talking about the storyboard system, and
Yes.
then and on Ren and Stimpy, it's the storyboard first instead of script first.
I mean, I feel like I had a really well-rounded education between The Simpsons and then I got to Ren and Stimpy, and I never really thought about cartoons versus just animated shows. And Ren and Stimpy is a cartoon. It's just there to celebrate action and comedy. And The Simpsons is well done, but it's a scripted, and those early Simpsons have a lot of nice cartoony stuff in them, and people think they're all cartoony, but they're not. They're just little snippets but that's what you remember. But Ren and Stimpy was, the opposite of that, and most of them hated The Simpsons
Mm.
because that's not a cartoon. But after that, like when I went on to Duckman and even in Futurama, like the stuff I learned just about focus and where you're putting the audience attention that from Ren and Stimpy is invaluable. And I try to get, I work with a lot of young artists now who they've learned everything from cartoons instead of from cinema and
Mm.
life and from primetime cartoons. And I'm like, watch Looney Tunes. I just sent them to watch like Super Rabbit. It's just got great pans. It puts information in front of you in a great way that you shouldn't say we can't do this in Futurama because I'm not saying we're going to do everything that you're seeing in this, but there's some of this stuff is valuable. um, so yeah, between those two, I felt like I had some valuable skills to use on Duckman.
We do want to zero in on Duckman, Pete, because we covered one of the episodes you directed, the Once and Future Duck, and we personally love Duckman. We feel it's underappreciated. And I want to know how you found yourself on the show. Were you drawn to another vulgar show with yellow characters, or did you just end up on it and find yourself enjoying the work?
mean, by that time, I had kind of left Ren and Stimpy. I left being in house, and I was freelancing storyboards and also freelancing boards on The Simpsons. I like rented an office, and so I was doing them both. But I wanted to direct, and my friend Ramey was on Duckman and said, "Hey, they're looking for directors." So it was at Klasky. I had worked at Klasky, so I went in and they were interested. I mean, it paid less than what I made as a storyboard artist. And I argued for a while, but eventually it was just like, I want to be a director. And so I took that job, and I had watched Duckman a little. But, when I got on it, it was really, it was all scripted, but it had a lot of wackiness, and like it had great things to do to figure out, like that Once and Future Duck was. I loved it. I mean, that last scene with them all coming in. I mean, it's only him and usually one character. It's just a parade of characters assaulting him from front and back. And I know I had some storyboard artist boarded, but I redid all of it because I could see it, just him being turned, and the sneezing guy and him jumping at him, and so that show again, it was Klasky was tried to do things inexpensively, so that's why they hired me. They looked for people without experience who were looking to move up, and they hired a lot of storyboard artists like that too. And anytime anyone got good enough and had some skills to earn some money, they would get a job somewhere else. So we had a constant flow of new board artists, but it was great. I learned. I wanted to direct because sometimes I would storyboard stuff, and then it just would be different. It was someone else's show to direct, and they did things differently than I pictured them, and I wanted that part of it to be mine, and it was great. And it led, it was a great show to be on. The writers were really receptive of our input, and Klasky Chupa was incredible because they had a recording booth in the building. They had so I could go in to the records. I could go in and sit in to the sound edit if I wanted. After the animatic, they had a whole staff of the guys who did the sound effects. They did Foley there. I could go sit in on the final mix. I mean, it was incredible. I got to do, just be a part of everything on that show, which has never ever happened again.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like there was the same kind of wall like with Simpsons in between animation.
Yeah, Simpsons. Even though Gabor had all that stuff, they did their stuff over on the Fox lot. And when I went to Futurama, it was like that. I would build the animatic, and then they would do their edit over on Fox, send it back to us. I'd do the revisions. We'd get the color. We would cut it together and send it to them, and then I would see it on television. I would maybe get some color fixes that had to be done, but it was a little disappointing. And when I applied for Futurama, a friend of mine, Mike Anderson, called me and just said, "Hey, there's this new show Matt's doing that I think you'd be great on." And he was at Film Roman, and there was a question who was going to get it, Film Roman or Rough Draft. And he said, "I don't know who's going to get it. I'd love to have you here, but even if it doesn't come here, I think you'd be great on it." And so I called them, and I was in a good position because I had worked on Simpsons, but I was not working on it now because they could not hire any of those people. And I had some directing experience. And at the same time, SpongeBob had started, and a guy from Klasky, this guy Larry LaFrancis, was producing that, and they called me on that too. And I really liked that show.
Wow,
And they
because
were, and
SpongeBob has a lot of, or it started with a number of ex Ren and
Mhm.
Stimpy folks too. So you'd have been
Yeah,
in good company there.
but that show was, I really did, and I loved the pilot, and but they said you'd be storyboarding and or you'd be directing, but a director would just do the storyboard up to the animatic, and then it would go to Steve and his partner, and they would rewrite it all, and then it would be timed. Like that directing to me was even less of it was just like a first draft
Hmm.
of the storyboard. It was me and another storyboard artist, and they would call me the director, and I was like, I I uh, I liked I liked the idea of the prime time thing a little more. So
Oh,
fortunately,
I have one burning Duckman question before we move on to all the awesome Futurama stuff, which is you also directed another my favorite ones that is Haunted Society
yeah,
Plumbers, the Hope and Crosby one,
yeah.
and that's a great episode, and I could ask you a million questions about it. But the episode ends with Homer Simpson in a cameo, which shocked me.
Mhm.
When I saw it new, I was like, wait, that's really him, and it's really Dan Kessler and I doing it. So, do
And that's
you
me.
know
Over the credits, that's me
that?
saying, "Okay, Homer."
Wow, you're the one directing it. That's amazing.
Oh,
Wow.
Yeah.
cool.
Okay, so then you must know how that came together. Then
Okay, Homer, it's just what the hell are you staring at, okay? Take 38.
What the hell are you looking at? I mean, staring. Go!
Okay, good, but could we try one where you say, what the hell are you staring at? Take 39.
What the hell are you looking at? Go! Staring at.
Close, very close. Okay, show 4457, take 40.
What the hell are you looking at? Go! Staring.
Terrific!
I will say I wasn't familiar enough with the Hope and Crosby, and I think Martin and Lewis too, that they would have a guest star like that at the end. And so I was like, what is this? I don't even get this. Why, But I believe they just called, I think you guys, didn't you research it? They called Matt and he agreed to it. And
I had to assume Matt was the conduit for it. It seems like he'd be the one, just because not. It seems like not everybody at the Gracie offices likes Klasky Chupo, but it seemed like Matt would still want
yeah,
to make the deal.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know the workings of how they finagled that, but either they called him or they just called Fox, and Fox said, okay.
But wow,
I know,
getting
other
Homer in it.
crossovers have happened that he hasn't been too excited about, but this one kind of worked within the show as a parody of a show that often had some kind of mystery guest would show up. But
Hey, music fans, there are some great concerts headed this way. Don't miss out on all these shows in Dallas. Deftones at Madison Square Garden, Eagles at the Sphere, and Foster the People at the Ryman Auditorium. Tickets are going fast, so don't wait. Head to LiveNation.com to get your tickets now. That's LiveNation.com.
January 2nd on ABC, get ready to move that bus. The beloved series Extreme Makeover Home Edition is making a triumphant return to kick off the new year. Join the makeover mavens Joanna Teplin and Clee Shearer as they hit the road on a mission to transform the lives of deserving families whose stories will truly touch your heart. With the help of the design team Ariane Belazer and Wendell Holland, they have just 4 days, a race against time, to rally communities, demolish old homes, and rebuild not just houses, but lives. Get ready for those heartfelt moments filled with tears of joy as Joanna and Clee dive deep into the emotional journeys of these families, uncovering their struggles and beginning the healing process. It's not just about remodeling homes, it's about rebuilding hope, one family at a time. So don't miss out on this incredible journey. Extreme Makeover Home Edition premieres January 2nd, 8/7 Central on ABC, and will be available to stream next day on Hulu. You won't want to miss it.
You've almost certainly been prescribed a medication before, but did you understand how it worked? The way your medication works in your body shouldn't be a mystery. Learn how Vyvgart Hytrulo, Efgartigimod alpha, and hyaluronidase QVFC works by visiting vyvgart.com/MOA. That's VYVGART.com/MOA. Brought to you by argenx.
People like to talk about Minnesota winters. We prefer to live them. See why winter is Minnesota's hottest season. Visit exploreminnesota.com.
That show was a lot of fun too. I got to go to the Emmys for that. Didn't win one, but
Well, thank you for answering our Duckman questions, Pete. Now let's move on to Futurama. You were with the show from the beginning. You directed the second episode of Futurama. It sounds like you were in on the ground floor. What was that like, and how much input did you have in just the design of the show and how it moved and how it looks?
by the time I came in, it was designed, and Rough Draft had already, Rich Moore and Greg Vanzo and I think Brett Holland and the crew that had been there, like on the Max and doing other stuff, they had done like a little pilot clip to try to get the show. And when I called, they were waiting to see if they were going to get it. It was between Rough Draft and Film Roman, and the people at Fox they were not excited about a studio that had never done a primetime TV show getting it. Somebody told my boss Claudia, like, I know you would do an A, but there's a 5% chance you wouldn't be able to get it done, and I would rather take 100% chance on the other studio than, and so they were really gonna. So I had called Claudia, and I was calling her every week, just like, hey, did it got the show yet? No, we don't have it yet. It was taking forever. And I had worked on The Wild Thornberries at Klasky, and I had kind of finished, and I knew I was going to go either to Futurama or SpongeBob. And so I had kind of already left there without knowing exactly what I was going to do. And I was just on pins and needles. And as soon as they got picked up, they hired me and whoever else they had lined up. And we went in and we started story. I was going to do show 2, but I was there. So I storyboarded on show 1. And by then, I think Brett Holland and Greg were doing turnarounds of all the characters, and they had already fairly well designed. They had a pack with a bunch of BGs, but we had to start doing production BGs, views of every conference room, the ship. So I wasn't there. Matt and David had been designing it for close to 10 years prior to that. And they used a lot of Simpsons designers. And I think they've talked about how overdeveloped it was when they went to pitch it. So.
Yeah, the premise of the show kind of goes out the window in the second season, but they end up having a lot more fun expanding from that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we talked a little with Bill Morrison about his work in the early days, helping with designing it too. Though, yeah, the second episode you do is almost like a repilot of it. Not a repilot, but that it's like it introduces all of the secondary characters in it, so it's about as important as the pilot.
Yeah. More so, I say. No. The pilot is almost like a pitch piece pilot. And yeah, I don't know why they just couldn't squeeze Amy and Hermes in. I think maybe Matt wishes he had just had a scene where they walk past them in a room, because there's something good about having those characters in the pilot. Legal wise, I'm not sure what it is, but.
Well, it's interesting too. You mentioned the Rough Draft thing. Because there definitely, we've heard in our research that there was, Fox seemed to be, wavering in their commitment on the show and time slots and everything. But even from the beginning, it sounded like there were doubts on Rough Drafts, doing their first show.
Matt, I'm trying to be, not Matt, I think wanted Rough Draft to have it, but Fox did not want they did not want an unproven studio to be doing their show. And And he said, "Look, this can't be. I can't have a fight like this right out of the gate." So he was kind of willing to go with them. And then Rich and they were all sitting around playing Nintendo or something. And Claudia goes, "We got to do something." And they spent 2 weeks and made this, just a little 1 minute thing of the conference room with a big screen with Fry getting, just something with the characters in it. And it wasn't even the actual Planet Express ship, some flying scenes. And they sent it to Matt. And he was like, I think when they got him on the phone, he was about to agree to give it to, they were about to call Film Roman and give it to him. And
wow.
And this just led to another delay of that. And I think Film Roman, they did their own test and somehow, Matt, I think Film Roman is great and everything, but
Yeah,
I'm glad Rough Draft got it.
No, Rough Draft. Well, yeah, I mean, we in '90s in pre-Futurama cartoons when we cover like where Rough Draft or Rough Draft Korea is the overseas studio, we're always like, boy, this is usually the best looking one, or like they were very consistent and good, even on 11-minute or Saturday morning shows and not sitcoms,
Yeah.
but they were out of the gate like such a quality studio.
Well, I mean, that's Greg Vanzo owns Rough Draft here, and his wife Nikki owned Korea Studio, and he helped her set it up, and I think they kind of got people off the being paid per foot for their animation, so they were cranking it out and shifted them, put them on salary and expected good work out of them. And I don't know what other studios were doing that, but it did make Rough Draft a little unique in that regard, that you could expect a little more out of them.
Well, these days, Futurama is a show that cannot be killed. But back when it originally launched, Fox seemed to hate the show they ordered. And we heard a lot of the drama behind the scenes. Also, Matt Groening was very upfront in the press from the beginning saying how Fox was mistreating the show. Were you on the animation side feeling that? Or were you all just too busy getting episodes done to worry about time slots and delays? I know, especially with production season 4, some of those episodes didn't air for maybe 2 years after they were done.
Yeah, I've heard you guys saying that. I honestly don't remember that part, but I do know, we were busy, but we were maybe a little unique, more than the Simpsons in that, we really helped develop the show. We were really integral to it. So Claudia was part of those discussions with them. And it was really, I remember just sitting down at 7 instead of 8 and then turning the TV on and football was on and going, God, Jesus, I being very disappointed that my shows weren't on. That first season was great. We had a premiere party for the first one. I had a party at my house for the second one. We went places to watch episodes. The crew was really excited about it. I remember doing that on The Simpsons too. We would go to a sushi place to watch one fish, two fish, red fish.
Oh, that's so cool.
Would want to, we'd want to get together to watch the shows that we all made. And I remember, just being really disappointed that when it would not be on, and who knows when it would be on. And I don't it's a long time ago. I don't remember that so many shows waited that that long. I must have been working on something else, because the show had been canceled already, and we were all put out to look for other work.
Well, yeah, it's darkly comic on some of the commentaries where they're remarking that like they're doing a commentary that for an episode that still hadn't aired yet in the US, which is normally not that is normally it's like aired at least a year before they do the commentary.
Yeah.
And Pete, you directed 2 of the Futurama direct-to-video movies.
Mm-hmm.
It sounded, based on what Rich Moore has said on commentaries, like a big, massive crunch. Can you explain your history with working on the movies and what that was like compared to production of the TV show?
The movies were, they were basically like 4 episodes per movie. And I know we had an accelerated schedule. I didn't do one episode and then do the second one and then we had to come up with we did storyboards, and I think we built storyboard animatics for those movies because we just wanted to make sure that, they were to time, because if each one of them's 2 minutes too long, suddenly you're 10 minutes too long overall. And there was a tight budget on them. I remember it was very crunched, but it was fun. Uh, Dwayne did the first one, then I did the second one, and we had a storyboard crew layout. We did layout on all of them, and when you do layouts, you have a scene folder for every single scene. So that show had 4 shows at once of layouts in my office was crazy. We had to come up with like 5-digit scene numbers, so you knew which scene 1 from movie 4 from scene 1 from part 4 of movie 2. You couldn't just have scene 1, and you didn't want to number them 1 all the way to the end of 4 movies. So it was a big ordeal, and I think at that time we were allowed to make them widescreen. Like the seasons 1 to 4, we were digital, but they just did not want to do anything widescreen. So those are all the 3:4 ratio. These ones we switched over. That was a shift.
Well, yeah. Also on the technical side, yeah, like not just Futurama was a digital show before a lot of shows went digital, like fully digital, and then the shift to HD and widescreen. Like, did either of those feel like a big jump on a technical level, like one going to digital and then 2 going to HD and widescreen?
The first 4 seasons were digital, yes, but we drew them on paper, and Rough Draft they did their animation on paper. It became digital where you would normally go to ink and paint. They would do a really nice cleanup on the paper so that they could scan it. And from that point on, it was digital. They colored it and composited it all digitally. But I mean, everything we did, all of the pre-production was still on paper, and still hand drawn. But when it came back digitally, it was great because I think Susie was talking about it. I mean, if when I did the Galapagos Islands scene with all the robots going crazy, that scene came back, and when we it was every robot in the world going crazy. So it was storyboarded, looked great, but a storyboard is black lines on white paper. It came back, and in that scene, there's 100 robots, and as soon as they start running, suddenly it's just empty background. So digitally, we could just go through every other scene, find every robot we could, and just layer them in the back. Like she said, you could fix pans. When I was on Duckman, if a mouth was wrong, you would have to write up a note, send it back, and they would have to refilm the whole scene. Duckman or any other film scene. Anytime there's a fix, they got to refilm that whole scene. And every time they do that, the cells get dirtier, they get scratched. So, boy, when the greatest part of the digital stuff is on the end. You could add color, adjust colors, darken things, pull characters from other scenes to put them in. The shift to HD, suddenly the main thing is like on a piece of paper, if you want to, the classic things they always do are they start tied on something and then they whip out. And on a piece of paper, the camera can only go in so far before that drawing looks bad. And once you go to HD, it can go in less far before it looks bad. And now on whatever they call it now, 4K, you can barely move in on it before it starts to look bad. So it limits what you can do without having to take steps to insert new drawings on these. It makes it more difficult. Like when we did the movies, they said, yes, you can go widescreen, but they still wanted it to be protected for the 3:4. So we had to make sure we didn't put anything important on the edges. So, if you have 2 characters in a scene, they're both in the middle of the frame. I think eventually we might have started just kind of forgetting about that. And, but they wanted to be able to just crop the sides off for people with regular TVs. And that was a little frustrating.
Well, with the new reboot of Futurama, can you detail any other production changes that have happened in terms of how you did it before on Fox or on Comedy Central? It feels like it has been, I guess, 10 years since it last aired on Comedy Central, so must have been some improvements there.
I guess, I think in Comedy Central, I'm trying to remember when we started using Cintiqs to draw. I think Comedy Central, we were still on paper. No, we were working digitally then. Still hand drawing it, but on a Cintiq. Probably the biggest thing is that once we came back, the writing staff got smaller. They used to have a dozen guys, so that you would get more rewrites back then, because anytime they watch a scene, if there's 12 guys in the room, somebody can come up with a new punchline or something. And so they, the tail end of the scenes, like in Insane in the Mainframe, when Bender pull a baby out of his chest at the very end, or a human heart?
Human heart, yeah.
Well,
right.
Original was a banjo, then it was a baby, and then it was a human heart. It's just like you could count on the punchlines at the end of a scene to change like every time, after the boards, after the animatic, and after the color. But now they've got less guys, so they write a script, and it's really solid, and they stand by it. And I'm not saying it's better or worse, but we get less rewrites. If something's not working, yes, they'll fix it, or if we do something wrong, we'll fix it. But in general, those punchlines kind of stay, and it's a much quite a bit smoother process on the revision. So one thing that has happened is our schedules maybe haven't gotten tighter, but they haven't expanded much. When we did Disenchantment, the schedules were expanded because the production of that was a lot more difficult, with the backgrounds being painted, and there was an expectation of armies and stuff. So when Futurama started up again, and I found out we only had like 7 weeks to storyboard with 2 people, as opposed to 9 weeks with 3 or 4 people, I was like, what is this? And I was told, like, that's what our schedule's always been on Futurama. I'm like, oh man. But it's, we make it work.
Well, on Futurama, yeah, you made it all the way to, supervising director, from just, a main director to supervising director, and even the director on one of the finales, the Comedy Central finale. Meanwhile, and I'm curious, do you have a particular favorite episode of Futurama?
I like Meanwhile a lot, of course. I like Reincarnation with the 3 animation styles. I did that one, the anime and Fleischer type black and white, and then 8-bit. I love the late Philip Fry. That's awesome.
That's such a great episode.
Love a lot of, Parasites Lost. I think I mentioned in the comments that if you listen to those commentary tracks, it just seems to be the artist going like, oh my God, a lot about how hard everything was. But it was hard. But man, that, like, Parasites Lost had so many challenges that I love. I love working that kind of stuff out, like those zoom ins to the little miniature characters on, like, you start in the conference room and then zoom down to the table where they are. That's not just one, that's a bunch of, you have one drawing, and then when you zoom in, you go to another drawing. And then I think that had like 4 or 5 drawings. Like the professor has miniature people on his finger. I think that we zoom, or he puts somebody on there, and then we zoom in, and then he walks in. I mean, and then it had a sword fight in Fried's brain, and and we had really great animators that I loved. I loved working on that stuff, and I love the Comedy Central years had a lot of great stuff too, like, street racing and a Myrtleator and freezing, time freezing. And the new shows have a lot of that, a lot of great stuff too. I love shows that, they've got some heart to them and humor. And then I like a technical challenge of how are we going to show this? A lot of times storyboard artists, you get something that hasn't been shown before, and it has to be there. You can't just draw what's written. You got to like draw it. How is the audience going to recognize what this is?
You mentioned the Fleischer thing. Were you also part of was that on one of your movies, the Fleischer opening on Futurama too? That was great.
I like that one. And then later, they had the third of the show which was Fleischer, and they were both. We did different design. I think we used the same Fry, Leela, and Bender, but different. They had different gags, so different designs. And we built a. Matt always talked. He loves old animation too, and we always talked about those 3D backgrounds that Fleischer did. The something, I forget what they called them. The turntable.
The process, yeah.
And so if you look at that, when Fry goes down on the comet, and there's a scene of him kind of skipping, and we built a 3D turntable of a diamondylium that's kind of rotating behind him. And it's built in the shape of a wedge so that it's just rotating. So you can see the center diamond mountain just kind of turning while the foreground goes. And in the animatic, it was kind of a long scene, and I said, you guys just leave it long. You'll be happy when you see what it is.
That's awesome.
So again, the show gives you opportunities to do stuff like that.
We talked about Ren and Stimpy and The Simpsons and Futurama. Is there anything that you worked on you'd like to highlight here that is maybe not as popular or might get overlooked compared to these bigger shows you were part of?
Simpsons, Ren and Stimpy, Duckman. I add a rough draft in between the cancellation of Futurama and the Comedy Central shows. I went back to freelancing on The Simpsons, so I storyboarded like seasons 8, 9, and 10, and I tried to do. It was not as good money as directing, and then I did enjoy one of your favorite shows, Drawn Together, which has questionable. It's crude. I guess I'm curious why you dislike it so much. I know it's tasteless. To us, it was. I love the idea of the 8 cartoon characters of different styles, and again, it was a challenge to get them working the way they were. Spanky was hard because we couldn't do them in Flash, but we tried to make it look like that. But I enjoyed that. The way I started supervising was like in season 3 of Futurama, we did a season of Baby Blues, and Susie Dieter actually brought us like the last 5 episodes of that from Warner Brothers. The writers were pretty unhappy with what was being done there. It was a little too cartoony. So she brought it to us, and I directed one of those. And then when it seemed like they were wanted to do another season, I walked into Claudia and go, "Hey, if you're looking for someone to supervise on that, I'd like to put my name in." And I think she said, like, "You think you could do that?" I think so, And so that was like my first supervising gig, and we were still in production on Futurama, so we took people who, not even storyboard artists, some timers, just an assortment of people, some ADs, and 5 people. We did like 13 episodes, and that show I really liked it. It was great. And it got shelved. Like when UPN, or I think we did it for the Channel 5 or 13, or it just got, when when that network folded, they just wrote it off as a loss. And
okay. Actually, since you mentioned that, I had read that Baby Blues had like an unaired season. That really happened. Wow.
And it came back in color. I mean, it was in color. It was, everything was done except, final sweetening, and they still did telecine back then because it was on film, and I really liked them. They were fun, and I tried for a few years to, anytime I heard somebody was there, I'd email them, hey, there's these cartoons sitting there, and
wow.
But I don't
This
even
is a
know.
call. This is a call to our listeners. We must free the Baby Blues season 2 tapes. We got to find them.
I have animatics and stuff. I know I have color of it. I still work in the industry. I get nervous about dumping stuff, but I'd like to show some animatics or something.
Man, that's I will say about Drawn Together. I think you guys you guys are tasked with, like, this the conceptually you have to do all of these different cartoon characters hanging out together, and they all have to have a distinct style and still work together. And I think on a technical level, you guys pull that off so well. Yes, personally, I'm not the biggest fan of the scripts, but what you guys animated, you guys did a very, very good job, especially on like a Comedy Central budget. I think so too.
Yeah. It was pretty low budget. And then they eventually did a movie that was so low budget, we couldn't even be part of it.
Yeah.
But it was, there were certainly people at the studio who were a little less than happy with it too. But
yeah, I don't want to insult any of the hard work you guys did on the animation.
No, we like the animation. That part's fine.
All right. Nope. We did Napoleon Dynamite. That was kind of fun. Like 6 episodes of that.
Oh, I'm just shocked. I'm still reeling from like learning the Baby Blues. There's like lost episodes of Baby Blues out there.
Yeah.
Just like that. And then Warner did a write-off for that, like all the way back then. Like that's, man. Dang.
Yeah, like a full season of color that had been returned. I'm surprised it hasn't like shown up on whatever, not Adult Swim, but just overnight stuff.
Well, yeah, it did, because that was like where they put, Mission Hill and the Oblongs and some Baby Blues. So I would have figured they would have just played it all on Adult Swim. So yeah, that's even more surprising. Yeah.
It was good. Really good show.
So, Pete, as of this recording, we are towards the end of the second run of Hulu Futurama episodes. There are more in the future. We know you can't say when those are coming, but can you tease anything? Can you let us know what to expect from that show or anything you're working on right now?
I can tell you exactly when they're coming, probably. Because, I mean, so nowadays you do 20 episodes. So we did 20 episodes. They aired 10 in 2023, right? In July. They're airing the second 10 of that 20 now, starting in July. So I can't say for sure, but my guess is the next 10 will air in July of 2025. Those are the ones we're working on right now. I'm directing the 10th one as we speak, cool. And my storyboards on it. So those are, half of them are in Korea already being animated. They'll come back. Those 10 we will probably be finishing as they're airing, and then we're about to start on the second 10, and those will be done shortly after that, but they won't air till 2026, and who knows if we'll do another 20 after that. What can I tease? It's got Zaps in it.
Oh boy!
Will there be robots in upcoming Futuramas?
There's a robot in every single episode. I can guarantee that.
He's not breaking an NDA, I don't think, by telling us that.
Yeah.
No, yeah. This new season has been a lot of fun. We really loved we did a whole episode on the Amazon or Momazon episode. That was a very fun one.
So you guys are on the Comedy Central ones now, right?
Yeah, we just started covering the Comedy Central ones. I think we're going to be doing Lethal Inspection next, and then I believe the late Philip J. Fry comes right after that.
Oh, good. Yes, back then, we did 26 episodes, and they aired them in seasons of 13, and now we're down to 20 that are seasons of 10. And next it's going to be 6 episodes, and there'll be seasons of 3, I guess. It gets some shows. There's some live shows do 8. I guess everything's gotten smaller.
Yeah, the 10 where we're used to it now, like 10, but it's 20, and then that's why we had to double check when the news came out, like, okay, Futurama got renewed, and we're like, wait, this is a real renewal, right? It's not just the next 10, and
10
it's
more are
another
coming.
20.
Yeah, and last year the writers and actors strike kind of. I don't know if we would have got picked up earlier. So we started this run in January. Like the both strikes ended, I guess, in September, October, something, and then people just needed time to get get their wits back together. So we started up in January.
You've been there from episode 1 to now, and it's
Yeah.
been doing
I mean,
great stuff.
I've told people I'd be happy to finish my career just doing Futuramas, and I'm getting pretty close to there. So
You'll do another finale on the show, and then maybe also another return season 2.
yeah, I'm doing the finale of what we're working on now, which for us is season 10. I have no clue what it is on Hulu, but
it's very confused.
Those numbers are always wrong. We love production season numbers.
Yeah.
That's our holy Bible.
But I don't know, like, where would you see production numbers if they're not selling DVDs anymore?
I guess they're always buried at the back of the episode, usually. I think they still include those in the Hulu ones.
Right. 7 ACV, something or other.
And we don't skip the credits, right, Henry?
No way. No.
We're looking at all the storyboard artists.
Yes.
Writing down names.
But but Peter, thank you. I could ask you a million more questions about specific Duckman jokes as well. But, or in Disenchantment as well. But we really appreciate all of your time today, Peter.
No problem.
Thanks so much, Peter. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, music fans, there are some great concerts headed this way. Don't miss out on all these shows in Dallas. Deftones at Madison Square Garden, Eagles at the Sphere, and Foster the People at the Ryman Auditorium. Tickets are going fast, so don't wait. Head to LiveNation.com to get your tickets now. That's LiveNation.com.